Okay, hey guys, so Keon here, and this is kind of like the weekly update for my uh, slight improvements on Mega Man Legends. I would like to say, I would like to say progress, but I guess for now, it's just short of progress improvements. So what we're looking at right now is I managed to read the entities from the file. So what we're doing is when we click on import, we're going to want to import all the files from the game, and then we're going to store them locally inside the browser, inside what's called IndexedDB, which will save the data inside your browser between uh, sessions. So basically, you can close your browser, you can open your browser, and the data is still there. So we want to put the game data in persistent storage so we can refer back to it several times. Um, Last week I was saying that from there I wanted to slice up the binary data and parse from that binary data. But since then I've made a new approach, and I think I'm just going to work with an in between format. And what I mean by that is, previously what I was trying to do is like read the data and then parse or and then build the model directly from the binary data. And I think what that does is that kind of prevents scrutiny of my code, so to speak, because someone who understands 3D models or works with Blender might not necessarily want to work with this like ugly code, but they do understand data structures. So what I'm doing in this case is I'm splitting up the um, the building of the 3D model with reading the binary data. And what I mean by that is when I go through and read the file, what I'm going to do is I'm going to split it down into a set of uh, objects. So we have a number of faces. A faces has an index U and V. So what I'm doing is I'm reading the binary data and I'm building a JSON representation of the data that's the exact values are being read from the binary. So rather than working with binary directly, I'm creating this in between format, which is the exact same thing that the binary would be, just in readable format. And so I think that way that I think this is going to have two improvements. Is like one, I don't have to worry about reading binary data and then immediately applying it. I can take the data, get it so it's readable, and then interpret it, and then build the 3D model from there. So you have the strict reading and then you have the interpretation. And then if we split those into two parts, I think that makes it a lot easier to address of what's going wrong where, rather than trying to mix those together and having a bunch of ugly code that tries to do things on the fly or build things or stuff like that. We can, we can build these interpretations and then store these interpretations, and then if our interpretation gets updated, we can throw these away. We can rescan all the original binary data that's in the code or that's in the game files or that's in persistent storage, and then we can rebuild these. So what this is doing is this is going through an example file and reading the binary for the polygons that are being built. Polygons is a bad word, but it's my term for this right now. The bones, and then the hierarchy, which is the hierarchy of the bones and which polygons are weighted to which bones. And then the texture, theoretically, but it looks like my texture interpretation is wrong. So as I go through, and as I'm going through, I am taking the time to use a wiki as a notepad to take notes on everything. So hopefully this forces me to be more strict about what each thing I do, what notes and what records I leave in a more digestible format. So this is a quick scan of all the files that contain entity models, and their length and information of that. So rather than having to dig through the game files, it should be ready referenceable here. And as I go through and break down more and more examples and more information will be here, because this helps me check my interpretation. And so, yeah, this is what's going to be stored inside index be along with the game data, but this will just be anytime we need to update something, we can wipe this, we can rerun the scan, we can update our interpretation, and then we can build the models from there. So I think I'm going to store the interpreted data and not the sliced out binary data. Yeah, and so that's where I am right now. I guess I need to fix the textures because that is super wrong. And I guess as I fix the textures and fix these values, I will be updating the wiki. And something that I'm going to have to, something that I'm trying to sort through in my brain is how to store, when I do store this intermediate format, how do I store it? Because there's kind of two things that I'm worried about right now. Is one, the IDs are not going to be unique. So if the game uses two IDs for this, or two IDs, but then the texture, two of the same IDs for the same model, but then the texture coordinates are different, then that's going to appear to be a different model, even though the textures might refer to the same thing. Or you could possibly have two different scenes with different models where the texture is the same, or the texture is different but has the same pointers. That's also going to be an issue. So the next thing I'm gonna have to figure out how to manage collisions when the game reuses the same assets over and over and over. But that's, I guess, a bridge I'll cross in a few days or next week. But right now I'm just trying to make sure that I have the interpretation correct, and that I can do more more small snippets or more small code on the side to run through and scan through how many of the same files are used, how many of the same assets are used between different scenes, how many times do they come up, how many scenes are the end, and try to get an idea of how many collisions there will be and how to deal with it from there. So I guess I'll have to build a table that kind of represents that data to make those kinds of decisions for how to build the user interface. But right now, the interpretations are kind of working better than expected. I think this should be pretty human readable for anyone who wants to come in and look at them and say, no, Keon, I think you should do this, or, Y is flipped, this is how we should approach it, or these are the animation tracks, this makes a lot more sense. So this should just make the data in general human readable, so that anyone can see it and anyone can kind of work with it, and they don't have to kind of worry about the binary abstract layer of working with these models. So I guess that's it for this week. Just a quick update, and I guess more on the storage and then more on the ID collision next week, and then hopefully I can get to the point where I'm still in the stages where I'm trying to abstract things away and make things look nice and trying to have a nice approach before I end up throwing everything at the wall, throwing out the bathwater, crying in the corner, and just slapping everything together. We're still in that honeymoon phase of reverse engineering before the shit hits the fan, and you just kind of do whatever works and throw in spaghetti code. But we're not quite there yet, so I guess I'll still try to continue with this more elegant approach until it ultimately fails and crashes and burns and leaves me a crying miserable mess of a shell of a human being. But that's it for now. I'm definitely enjoying having a couple hours every day, or spending a little bit of time every day to be able to work on this stuff again. It feels really good, and I guess I'll see you guys next week. Keon out.